The links between globalization and climate change. Our world is shrinking gradually. From the last couple of centuries, due to globalization, which is defined as a type of relationship built amongst the different countries, which to exchange of goods and other technologies, both developing and developed countries have been satisfying in their needs in terms of globalization. But this increasing pattern of globalization has also put in consequent effects on our ecosystem. Countries become more industrialized and increase production of their goods in order to overcome demand. These industries in turn emit various greenhouse gases, which acted as a major contributor in the climate change. Our atmosphere is gradually warming due to the accumulation of these gases. The impact that this climate change could have is an increase in drought conditions. Floods are taking place more frequently. Also, rising of sea levels and extreme temperatures are experienced. First of all, we're going to talk about the CO2. CO2 produced by globalization has negative effect on the climate. It has increased by 1/3 in the atmosphere in the last 10 years. Most of the CO2 released in the atmosphere today will remain there for centuries and will influence the climate of future generations. This air pollution has the same effect as the greenhouse effect, which has distribution such as floods, loss of integration water, heavy rainstorms, etc. Here's a video to illustrate this. The alternatives. Many of the solutions of the global problem lie at the level of regional, national, and local decision-making. At the level of industrialized countries, many measures could be taken to increase conservation and energy and efficiency to reduce the amount of soil fuel used. Alternative and renewable sources are becoming more and more economically viable and would be much more economical if the hidden environment costs of current energy sources, such as fuel and nuclear power, would calculated correctly in the real costs. Urban designs these days have been developed in order to recognize community life, in order to make a people less dependent on their individual cars, and to make public transport more effective and more efficient. This type of efficiency revolution is necessary in the long term, but it will not be enough. We must also review the notion of efficiency within societies. We need to be aware that an ever-increasing level of material consumption is not synonym with a better life quality. Indeed, studies have shown that families must work harder and harder to afford material goods. This gives them an increasing weak sense of emotional and spiritual satisfaction. It is a waste of time and takes them away from the true values and the world around them. National governments, city councils, industries, families, and individuals in industrialized countries must make conscious choices to move in a direction of signifying reducing energy costs, but progress is still too slow. On the other hand, there are also many opponents to see globalization as a cause, amongst other things, increasing income inequality and destruction of jobs. Economic globalization is also seen as one of the factors responsible for climate change and environmental issues. Although it is too difficult to calculate an exact climate impact of globalization, there is clearly a link between the two. Main direct sources of greenhouse gases emissions are power supplies, industrial production, and transport. Even without globalization, these would take place. But the trend towards globalization in the 20th century, and especially in the recent decades, has contributed to its global acceleration. In the first place, globalization gave rise to a multiplication of transport network in the form of road, rail, sea, and air transport within and across national borders. In addition, growing international trade and investment have stimulated global industrial activity. These developments went hand in hand with an increase of global greenhouse emissions, and initially developed regions such as the US and Europe were the main polluters, but over time, emergent economies such as China have become the main emitters. After all, an important part of global production has shifted into these countries.
It's not just climate change, which is like the most obvious example people give. I think more in terms of technological disruption. If you think about, for example, artificial intelligence, over the next 20, 30 years, pushing hundreds of millions of people out of the job market. This is a problem on a global level. It will disrupt the economy of all the countries. And similarly, if you think about, say, bioengineering and people being afraid of conducting, genetic engineering research on humans, it won't help if just a single country let's say the US, outlaws all genetic experiments on humans. But China or North Korea continues to do it. So the US cannot solve it by itself. And very quickly, the pressure on the US to do the same will be immense because we are talking about high risk, high gain technologies. If somebody else is doing it, I can't allow myself to remain behind. The only way to have regulations, effective regulations on things like genetic engineering is to have global regulations. If you just have national regulations, nobody would like to stay behind.
So this is really interesting. So it seems to me this may be one key to provoking at least a constructive conversation between the different sides here, because I think everyone can agree that the start point of a lot of the anger that's propelled us to where we are is because of the legitimate concerns about job loss. Work has gone, a traditional way of life has gone, and it's no wonder that people are furious about that. And in general, they have blamed the sort of globalism, global elites for doing this to them without asking their permission, and that seems like a legitimate complaint. But what I hear you saying is that, so a key question is, what is the real cause of job loss, both now and going forward? To the extent that it's about globalism, then the right response, yes, is to shut down borders and keep people out and change trade agreements and so forth. But you're saying, I think, that actually the bigger cause of job loss is not going to be that at all. It's going to originate in technological questions. And we have no chance of solving that unless we operate as a connected world.
Yeah, I think that, I don't know about the present, but looking to the future, it's not the Mexicans or Chinese who will take the jobs from the people in Pennsylvania. It's the robots and algorithms. So unless you plan to build a big wall on the border of California, the wall on the border with Mexico is going to be very ineffective. And I was struck when I watched the debates before the elections. I was struck that certainly Trump did not even attempt to frighten people by saying the robots will take your jobs. Now, even if it's not true, it doesn't matter. It could have extremely effective way of frightening people and galvanizing people. The robots will take your jobs. And nobody used that line. And it made me afraid, because it meant that no matter what happens in universities and laboratories, and there is already an intense debate about it, but in the mainstream political system and among the general public, people are just unaware that there could be an immense technological disruption, not in 200 years, but in 10, 20, 30 years. And we have to do something about it now, partly because most of what we teach children today in school or in college is going to be completely irrelevant to the job market of 2040, 2050. So it's not something we'll need to think about in 2040. We need to think today what to teach the young people.
Globalization can be part of the solution for climate change through the use of research and development capital flows and global network of industry. Climate change-friendly technology can be spread globally, not only reducing the negative effect of globalization, but accelerating the projects for a clean energy and sustainable future. Moreover, the accelerated growth of technology improvement will facilitate the monitoring and report of climate actions This way, governments can justify public policy and provide initiatives to change the private behavior. Also, globalization can part of the solution for climate change by facilitating the process of creation of collaborative and cooperative platforms for private public parties throughout the world to discuss and seek solutions for a sustainable development.